Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the first ever webinar in collaboration with Ecfmg, a division of Intealth and OET, brought to you by Project IMG. Project IMG is a global network that connects resources and supports international medical students and graduates. Our mission is to collectively advance equality in medical education worldwide. This is dedicated to all those who are pursuing a residency position in the United States healthcare system.
Good evening, everyone. Today we are joined by a wonderful panel of speakers. We have Dr. Sebastian, CEO and founder of Project IMG, Michael Hermosa, partner and CEO of Project IMG, Jack Was, he's a specialist in OET in the Americas region, and Daniel Tinder, Director of Domestic Services for Ecfmg. Dr. Sebastian Arruarana is the CEO and founder of Project IMG and the IMG event. He graduated medical school in his home country of Argentina. He then moved to the United States and worked in research at the Department of Plastics and Reconstructive Surgery at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in Los Angeles. He continued his academic career in OBGYN residency, where he completed his junior training at Lincoln Hospital and currently continues his residency training in the field of internal medicine at Brookdale University Hospital, New York City. Having gone through many struggles of inequity as an international medical graduate, he founded Project IMG. His goal of creating community and support amongst IMG was to democratize access for medical education, which unknowingly turned into the largest international medical community. Dr. Sebastian also started the IMG event, an international event for networking and to support medical students, residents, and doctors that have been held in many stages across the US, as well as different cities across the globe. This includes New York City, Chicago, Miami. It has gone to India, Pakistan, and the Philippines. Welcome, Dr. Victor Sebastian Arruarana.
Hello, Maria Augusta. Thank you, and thank you everyone for joining. I'm very excited for this. So my presentation is going to be quick. It's mainly, to thank everyone for being here. Maria Augusta already mentioned what we're doing in Project IMG, so it's an extension of what she just said. In the past 2 years, ever since Project IMG has been founded, we have helped literally thousands of students and doctors around the globe. And now we're getting even more involved into this, meaning this next weekend, we're having a meeting with senators in New York to see opportunities for IMGs and extending this further of creating new opportunities and job employment and making it a little easier for IMGs. It's going to be this Saturday in New York. The next month, we're doing the big event in New York City. We're expecting over 1,200 to 1,500 IMGs. So as you guys know, we started this is going to be the third annual event in New York, and it has grown a lot. And then for the future of the organization, we're looking forward to do many more collaborations with Intealth, Ecfmg, and everyone. And I wanted to say also that today's event is dedicated to all of you who are pursuing in residency positions in the US. From all of us on Project IMG, we would like to thank OET, Intealth, for taking the time to educate us on these very important topics. And as a community of IMGs, we would like to support each other to pave a clear pathway for all of us, for all of you guys that follow after us.
Thank you, Dr. Sebas. Now let's welcome Michael Hermosa. Michael is a partner and chief operating officer of Project IMG. During his career, he has led organizations in the academic medicine space to provide international medical students and graduates access to US medical education opportunities. He is passionate about advancing equality in medical education for all medical students worldwide. Let's welcome Michael.
Good evening, everybody. I want to send out a special thank you to everybody around the world that is tuning in for this very exclusive webinar event. I want to thank Ecfmg and OET for providing us access to this critical information that I know is probably the hottest topic of interest among international medical graduates around the world. I also want to take a moment to thank all of the members of Project IMG, those of you that have been very loyal to us, those that have been contributing to our organization. It's because of you that we're able to expand our organization, expand our influence, and continue to bring organizations and institutions to share information, share resources, and ultimately share opportunities. As you know, our core mission is to bring equality into medical education for all medical students. And with that in mind, we always want to be at the forefront of being that source, being that resource for you, and to bring you the most credible information available. I also wanted to take a moment to recognize the efforts of our ambassador team at Project IMG. It is through your dedication, through your volunteerism and contribution of your talents that we're able to do these special events. And two such ambassadors are our moderators this evening. We have Maria Augusta Montalegre, who is our ambassador to Nicaragua. And we have Dr. Kendia Reyes, who is our ambassador to Dominican Republic. I want to thank both of you tonight, and we look forward to hearing from our speakers. Thank you very much.
We're going to be hearing about tips and tricks for OET medicine. OET is the Occupational English Test. It is a global leader in English language testing for healthcare professionals. OET is an international English test that assesses the language communication skills of healthcare professionals who seek to register and practice in an English-speaking environment. They will present their language courses and preparation materials to help you study for the exam and receive a certificate. Thank you, Jack Was. Jack is the U.S. education specialist for OET. He promotes OET in the Americas region and supports candidates in finding quality test preparation. His background before starting work for OET is in adult education and university admissions and recruitment.
I'm going to be talking all things related to OET. So I'm going to start out talking about the rationale behind the test, talk about the 4 different sections of OET, and then cover some of the ways that candidates prepare for OET, and then leave some time at the end for questions as well. So to start out here, I want to mention the rationale for creating an English language test specifically for healthcare professionals. So you can see on the slides here some of the main reasons and some of the gaps that OET was designed to address. So the first one here, a shortage of skilled healthcare professionals in English-speaking countries. The second one being the pressure being put on healthcare populations by an aging population. The increased consumer expectations and a focus on patient-centered care, and the high cost of communication errors in healthcare, right? So as doctors, you all are very well aware of how damaging these communication errors can be in a medical context. So when looking at these points, you can see the need for trained healthcare professionals in an English-speaking context and start to understand how OET helps prepare healthcare professionals to meet these needs. So now that we know why OET was developed, let's talk more about what a healthcare test, what a test specifically for healthcare professionals means. So just to kind of give you an overview, OET was developed in consultation with subject matter experts, meaning that the content is relevant and specific to a healthcare context and is reviewed for relevance by licensed healthcare professionals in each country where the test operates. So for example, the medicine version of OET, which is one that you would be taking, is reviewed by physicians who also write items for the test on an ongoing basis. The test materials replicate the language skills required to deliver patient safety and quality care. All this is to say that preparing for and taking OET will help candidates develop skills they will need on the job, and candidates learn the type of language they'll need at work. Here are 2 examples that illustrate how OET is different from other general English language tests on the market. So the first one, the OET writing section, right? In other English language tests, you might be asked to either write an essay on a general topic, whereas for OET, you're going to be writing a healthcare letter, usually a referral letter, a discharge summary, and this letter will be based on case notes. So again, it's something very familiar for healthcare professionals. And the second example is for the speaking section. For a general academic test, you might be asked to participate in a structured interview on a general topic. Whereas for OET, you're going to be asked to participate in that healthcare role play between the patient and a candidate. And so again, this is something that is very familiar, and it's the type of conversation you might be having on a daily basis. Last thing to mention here before getting into the parts of the test and some of the benefits is the emphasis on clinical communication in the speaking test, which is what I was just talking a little bit more about. This emphasis really differentiates OET from other general English tests. And here are some examples of what candidates might be asked to do: elicit and deal with sensitive topics, translate specialist register into lay language, right? So taking that complex medical language and relaying it to a patient in a way that they would be able to understand, reassure someone who is anxious, and really manage the power relationship between the interlocutor and the candidate. So as a kind of a summary here, some of the main benefits of a healthcare specific test: it targets skills required in healthcare workplace, such as empathy, expeditious reading, recording details accurately. It promotes patient-centered approach, such as questioning techniques and active listening. It prepares test takers for cultural differences, like dealing with sensitive topics and using and understanding inclusive language. And it ensures successful test takers are ready for the demands of an English-speaking workplace. So now let's get into the parts of OET, the different sections. I'm also going to get into some of the main and top tips that you can use in preparing for these different sections. So the first section is the listening section. It's made up of 3 different parts and takes around 40 minutes. So part A is made up of 2 separate consultations between a healthcare professional and a patient. And this is something that healthcare professionals are very comfortable with. There's no need for you to change any information that you hear in the audio. You're just going to write exactly what you hear and to complete the gaps in the notes. And for this section, there are 12 questions for each of the 2 audios you will hear. You can see an example here on the slide of what the test of what part A looks like, right? So you can see the conversation between the healthcare professional and the patient with the gaps that you would have to complete based on hearing the audio. Part B is made up of 6 short dialogues or monologues in workplace settings. And these are the types of conversations healthcare professionals have with colleagues, such as the handover of a patient, a team briefing, feedback to a healthcare professional from a mentor, or other topics related to that. And there's 1 multiple choice question for each of the audios that you will hear. And part C is made up of 2 long presentations or interviews with healthcare professionals. And these are typical professional development content that healthcare professionals might be exposed to. So presenters might describe the work they do in their healthcare field, developments in the treatment of a condition or something of that nature. And there are 6 questions for each of the 2 audios for this part C. Moving on to some of the listening tips that you might encounter that will help you prepare for the listening section. The first one is to know the test format, right? Know what to expect and how to record answers for each part of the test by using official sample tests available on our website, which is oet.com. I'm going to be sharing a link in a little bit just with some additional information for you guys, but just to give you the overview that, all the information that you need can be found on our website. Next tip is to move forward even if you miss a question. If you don't understand a part of the audio, keep going so you don't miss out on any other questions, and then come back to the missed questions at the end if you have additional time, right? Don't get stuck on those questions that might be tricky initially. Next, in part A, use the reading time and text. So there are 60 seconds given before each audio plays. So make sure to use that time to get a sense of the patient scenario and start to anticipate the types of answers you'll hear by using words around the gap that give you an idea of if the answer is going to be a symptom, a body part, the patient's occupation, for example, what type of information should you be listening for in this part A. And in parts B and C, focus on meaning, not words, right? So these parts check candidates' understanding of the outcomes of a conversation or the opinions, attitudes of the speaker. You should avoid focusing on individual words repeated in both of the questions and the audio. Instead, focus on the speaker's intended meaning. Okay, moving on to the next section, which is the reading section. So again, there's 3 parts and it takes 60 minutes. The first part is an expeditious reading task. And this is completed as 15 minutes, and it's designed to replicate the workplace where healthcare professionals don't always have the luxury of time to consider information or check the meaning of words. You should really use your skimming and scanning abilities for this part to quickly find the information from one of 4 texts that you'll be presented with and copy this as your answer. And this part A has 20 questions in it. Part B are 6 short workplace extracts. So these short texts are typical of those sent as an email or memo in a workplace setting or found on the staff room notice board. So something like policy updates or machine operating instructions, something like that. And for this part, there's 1 multiple choice question for each of the 6 texts that you'll be presented with. And oops, sorry about that. And the last part here is part C. Is made up of 2 long presentation passages. So this is similar to the listening part. And these are typical of professional development contexts that you might hear as a healthcare professional. And they're topics of general interest to all healthcare professionals. Moving on to the tips for the reading section. So the first one is to do the part A questions in order. So the first set of matching questions in part A are designed to help candidates orient themselves to the text contents. So doing this first will make it easier to find the answers to the remaining questions because you'll have a better idea of what information each text contains and what they're about. Read multiple choice stems first. A good multiple choice strategy is to read the questions or the stem of the multiple choice first, and then try to find the answers in the text yourself before you read the possible answers, because this will help avoiding confusion where you might see a word and think and be led to believe that is the answer incorrectly. Instead, read the question first, look for the answers in the text, and then look at the options available to you. Build stamina and flexibility. For all parts of the test, train a few times a week by doing 1 hour of reading, 40 minutes of listening, and 45 minutes of writing to kind of prepare yourself for the environment of the test. And it's also good to try to do at least once a week, try to do all 3 of those things back to back to really replicate the conditions of taking the test so you'll be prepared on your test day. And practice first without a timer. Don't overcomplicate things when you start prep. You should give your brain space to work out how the test works and get familiar with the type of questions. And then you can start timing yourself based on the time allotted in the different sections. Okay, moving on to the third part here, which is the writing section. So the first thing I want to note here is that the listening and reading section of OET are general healthcare topics that are applicable to people in different professions within healthcare, right? It could be doctors, nurses, pharmacists. The writing and speaking sections are something that are even more relevant and familiar to you. They're profession specific. So for doctors taking OET, you would be presented with a medicine specific writing and reading task. What this writing task is writing a referral letter or a similar type of medical related letter. And you'll be presented with time to read the patient's case history. And at the end of the case notes is the writing task, which contains the details of who you need to write the letter to and why. And you can see here that you are given 5 minutes to kind of read these case notes. You can see an example of those case notes and some of the task and summary on the screen. And then you'll be given 40 minutes to actually write that letter. The top tips for the writing section: practice your test type. So prepare for the test type you will be taking by handwriting or typing your answers. for the sample test that you're doing, right? So you can take OET as a paper-based test or as a computer-based test. So make sure that you're prepping and preparing the same way that you'll be taking the test the day of your exam. Also make sure to practice all letter types, right? So for doctors, you'll be asked to write one of 3 letter types: a referral letter, which is the most common, or a discharge or transfer. So make sure to kind of get familiar with and prepare for any of those 3 letter types. Also, you can throw away your templates, right? No need to memorize any templates. In order to get a good grade on this section, your letter needs to be personalized to the specific patient and their individual needs. So don't be tempted to learn any templates or format by heart. Instead, focus on communicating the specific information relevant to your reader. And lastly, keep your reader in mind. This isn't a letter about what you as a medical professional find relevant or interesting. It's a letter telling the reader information that will be relevant to them. So this will help you decide which information to include or omit based on the specifics of the case notes and the instructions provided after. Moving on to the last section here, which is the speaking section, which is made up of 2 role plays. And one thing to note here is for the timing. So you can see here it says total time 20 minutes or online speaking is 30 minutes, right? So for the paper-based test, which is conducted at the test venue, they're allotted 20 minutes to complete this speaking section. Whereas for the online version, the computer-based test for OET, the speaking section is typically conducted later the same day that you take the other portions of the test at the candidate's home. So this is something that you do outside of the test venue. You would do it at home, which is why they have a 30-minute time window, just to allow for some environment and ID check. And what this means is to kind of assure the authenticity of the exam. And as I mentioned before, the speaking test is made up of 2 role plays designed to give candidates the opportunity to demonstrate a range of English and the ability to speak to patients or their families on a variety of common healthcare issues, where they might have to use skills such as explain, reassure, advise, persuade, respond. As you can see here, the candidate takes the role of the health professional and an interlocutor takes the role of the patient. And one thing to note, the interlocutor is only there to help facilitate the role play, right? This person has no part in the assessment of your test. They're just there to take the role of the patient. And the candidate and interlocutor have a roll card with information about the purpose of the conversation and some of the main talking points or tasks that they need to cover. Both are given 3 minutes to prepare for each role play and then 5 minutes to actually conduct or carry out the role play. Some tips here for the speaking section. The first one is to use the 3 minutes prep time wisely. Think about how you want to start the conversation and even consider writing it down, writing some of the main points or ways that you want to start so that when your time starts, you know how to begin and kind of what to start with based on the information you see in the roll card. Next, get feedback on your speaking. So invest in feedback from a trained teacher, right? People find it very difficult to accurately assess their own speaking, right? It's hard to kind of determine where your level of speaking is by yourself. So this is why we suggest that you kind of reach out to a professional, someone that is trained in that area and really knows how to give you constructive and helpful feedback. And you can find some information about providers and teachers that we recommend on our website, which again is oet.com. Next one is give the patient time to respond, right? So these role plays are meant to be a real conversation between the healthcare professional and the patient. So make sure you're not dominating the conversation as the doctor, as the medical professional, but instead you should engage the interlocutor and reply based on the information they provide you to have a real authentic conversation. And lastly, don't focus too much on finishing the tasks. It's most important that you have a natural conversation that focuses on the patient rather than rushing through all the tasks in 5 minutes. You don't have to complete every task to be able to get a high score. It's more important to be thorough when speaking about the tasks, and to make sure to include the interlocutor in the conversation, as I mentioned before. Okay, so now that we talked about the sections of the test, let's go over how candidates can prepare for OET. The first thing to mention here, the first step for candidates looking for preparation materials is the Learn section of our website, which is oet.com/learn. And on this preparation information page, there's a wide range of materials across multiple study formats that covers the 4 sections of OET, as well as hours worth of free resources. Some of the materials that you can find on the website are listed here. So for example, sample tests, free intro to OET course, an OET study guide, and also writing and speaking guides, right? Some candidates mentioned that those are kind of the 2 most difficult portions of the test for them. So of course we have information to help prepare you for those. And on the website, you can find both free and paid resources. So depending on what you're looking for, we have both of those options available. This is just an example of the OET study guide. So it's our best preparation resource all in one place. There are resources that cover all 4 sections of the test, as well as practice materials, as I was mentioning before. And just another example here is an introductory course available for OET medicine. The course is free on the OET website and takes approximately 3 hours to complete. So this gives you an overview of what to expect and kind of goes into more detail about some of, just some of the expectations and things that you should focus on when preparing for the test. Next, another great resource on our website is OET Pulse, which is a short exam to help candidates determine their current level of English, or another way of looking at it is how ready you are to take OET at this moment, right? What is your current level of readiness to take OET? So some more information about OET Pulse. As I said, it's a 30-minute English language placement. It can be taken any time, anywhere. The test is adaptive, making it more efficient and accurate, right? So based on how you reply and respond to the answers, it gives you answers relative to that. It's a very cost-effective tool to give candidates an indication of their English level, and it provides them with immediate results via their dashboard and feedback on how to improve and prepare for OET, and also assesses test takers' current English language level, or as I mentioned, their current level of readiness to take OET. So just to finish off here, some of the main benefits of OET. It helps preparing for OET is preparing for a new career in an English-speaking workplace, right? It really gives our candidates the confidence they'll need to communicate with patients and colleagues from day one. And candidates have also reported to us that they are more motivated to study for OET because the topics and questions are relevant and interesting to you, right? We just talked about the different sections from the reading to listening, speaking, and writing, and a lot of the topics are very relevant and engaging to you as medical professionals. We now have over 1,000 venues in over 90 countries, and OET medicine is accepted by medical regulatory authorities worldwide, including the US and Canada. So for more information, you can see our Who Recognizes OET page on our website.
Up next, we have Ecfmg explaining Ecfmg's pathways. Ecfmg is a division of Intealth, evaluates the qualifications of physicians worldwide. Ecfmg's programs evaluate international physicians who enter U.S. graduate medical education. Ecfmg's primary source credentials verification supports the world's medical education and regulatory communities in assuring the qualifications of physicians. In this webinar, Ecfmg will present information on its pathways for meeting the clinical skills and the communication skills requirements for Ecfmg certification for IMGs intending to participate in the Match 2024. Let's welcome Daniel Tindler, which is the Director of Domestic Services at Ecfmg, currently overseeing Ecfmg's certification program, including pathways. She has been with Ecfmg for 15 years, previously leading EDA support services at Ecfmg, assisting applicants to residency and fellowship programs. Welcome, Daniel.
Hi, thank you. Good afternoon, good evening, or good morning, I guess, depending on where you're joining us from. I'm just going to share my screen here, and then we'll get started. Great. So first, I want to thank Project IMG for inviting us to present today. I'm really pleased to be here to provide some information on how you can meet the clinical and communication skills requirements for Ecfmg certification via the pathways, and also to answer some of your questions at the conclusion of this short presentation. So first, I'm going to start just with a brief overview of all of our requirements for certification. The Ecfmg certification is a requirement for all graduates of medical schools located outside of the US and Canada to enter an accredited GME program here in the US. While not listed on this slide, the very first step in your eligibility for certification is determined based on your education history. So your medical school must meet certain requirements established by Ecfmg, and you must be either working towards or have received the appropriate degree at that school that allows for the practice of clinical medicine. There's also some individual requirements with your education, including restrictions on credits transferred to your school of graduation. So I just want to mention that here, but if you have any questions about your medical school degree or transfer credit acceptability, I encourage you to visit our website for complete detailed requirements in the Ecfmg information booklet. But the core requirements, once you've sort of met that initial bar, are listed here. First, you must complete the medical science examination requirements. So that's passing results on step 1 and step 2 CK. And then the clinical skills requirement, which can either be fulfilled by a previous passing performance on step 2 CS or a pathway, which of course we'll go over the pathways in detail in just a moment. And then of course a communication skills requirement, and that which includes English language proficiency. So that's again either through the former step 2 CS or a passing performance on the OET medicine exam. And then finally, you have to meet the medical education credentials requirement. And that requires Ecfmg primary source verify your final medical diploma and your final medical school transcript. Again, all of these criteria are listed in the Ecfmg information booklet. What I do want to note is that the time it takes to complete all of these requirements for certification can really vary greatly from one applicant to another, and the journey may be very different, especially because some of these requirements, include responses from medical schools. But you can begin these steps while you're still attending medical school, such as taking the USMLE exams or even completing certain pathways. And of course, the final primary source verification of your credentials requires that you've graduated. So you won't obtain that certificate until you've graduated and have those final credentials reviewed. What I know we're all interested in today are the pathways. So a little background on the pathways. From the early 2000s till March 2020, Step 2 CS was the exam that satisfied both our clinical skills and our communication skills requirement for certification. Then in March 2020, the USMLE program suspended Step 2 CS due to the pandemic. And later that year, Ecfmg established 5 pathways to allow IMGs who haven't passed Step 2 CS yet to meet our requirements in order to enter the 2021 match. And then in January in 2021, the USMLE program announced that Step 2 CS was going to be discontinued. And at that time, we expanded the pathways, including adding our 6th pathway here, which now allows all IMGs who are otherwise eligible for certification to have the opportunity to meet the clinical and communication skills requirements as well. So first, pathway 1. Well, first I'll mention just in general for all the pathways. These are leveraging existing quality programs, so licensure, medical school accreditation, and assessment. Those quality programs are relied on to confirm the clinical skills of the applicant. And that's why we have different avenues, because all of these quality programs are valid and important. So for Pathway 1, this is for applicants who have graduated and are licensed to practice medicine in a country outside of the US. Part of this pathway, you'll be required to supply your license, and ECFMG will primary source verify that document and obtain a certificate of good standing as well. And if you are licensed, you are required to go through Pathway 1. So that pathway is really for graduates. Pathway 2 are for applicants whose medical schools administer an objective structured clinical examination, or an OSCE, and it's required by medical licensure in that country. This pathway is pretty limited. Only 2 countries meet all the criteria for Pathway 2. And if you qualify for this pathway, you either have to have your diploma verified by ECFMG, or if you're still a student, your school can complete an attestation form confirming that you've passed that OSCE. Pathways 3, 4, and 5, we usually lump those together because they're very similar. They just rely on different accrediting agencies. The first, Pathway 3, is the largest pathway. That's schools who have been accredited by an agency that's recognized by the World Federation for Medical Education, or WFME. Pathway 4, the agency is the National Committee on Foreign Medical Education, or Ecfmg'S. And then Pathway 5 are for schools that issue a joint degree with an LCME accredited school. Now, if you're from a school who maybe meets more than one of these, you'll find your school listed under Pathway 3. The process is going to be the same for all 3 of these pathways. Your school must attest to your clinical skills. Now, if your school uses our electronic portal, they'll be able to log in and complete this process online once you submit your pathways application. And if your school doesn't use our electronic portal, you'll be provided a form to give your school that they can complete and send back to us to meet that requirement. And then finally, Pathway 6. Pathway 6 is developed for all applicants who might not be eligible for Pathway 1 through 5, or if you have previously taken Step 2 CS and have not passed that and have a failing result. So for Pathway 6, the applicant's clinical skills are observed and evaluated by licensed physicians in 6 real in-person clinical encounters using ECFMG's mini clinical evaluation exercise, mini CEX. You'll see it listed on our website as, and that's a specific tool for Pathway 6. So those are the 6 pathways in general. Full detailed requirements obviously available on our website. For no matter what pathway you're going through, you of course need to demonstrate that you've also taken and passed the OET medicine exam. So if we've heard lots about OET medicine today, I just want to confirm some requirements for certification. So first, you must attain a minimum score of 350 on the listening, reading, and speaking subtests, and a minimum score of 300 on the writing subtest, all in one test administration. It's required for all applicants for ECFMG certification, regardless of your citizenship, your native language, or the language of instruction at your medical school, and there are no exceptions to this requirement. And then finally, for Pathways 2024 specifically, applicants must have taken and passed OET on or after January 1st, 2022. So we don't recommend that you take OET early, that you really plan to take it the year that you intend to apply for Pathways and enter the match. Now, a lot of this information is on our website, but I'd love to share with you guys an overview of the application process. This will hopefully answer a lot of questions you may have that aren't as easy to obtain from reading the information available on our website. So first step in the process, you're going to apply online. I've provided the link here. It's on our website as well. I just wanted to mention this link specifically because you won't find this application in your OASIS account or in the IWA or Iowa where you applied for USMLE. It's a specific separate link and application. That initial application flow is going to ask you questions, but also connect to your Ecfmg record. And so based on your answers and the information on your record, the application is going to guide you into the pathway you're eligible for. So really takes the guesswork out of it for you. You'll really enter the pathway that's intended for you. And you have to obviously complete the application and the payment before we can begin the processing. Of course, we're going to need your OET scores, and there are two parts to releasing your OET scores to Ecfmg, and we get this question a lot. So first, you have to provide Ecfmg with verifier access using the usual process on the OET website. But you also must provide OET with your USMLE Ecfmg ID. If you book via or take the test via computer, you would have that access to enter that at the time you book. But if you forget to, you don't do that, that's not a problem. There's a form on the OET website where you can provide that ID to OET. They can add it to your record so that your scores can be sent over. So once you complete both of those steps, your passing results will then update in your pathways application, typically within 3 business days. If you complete all these steps before you've submitted your pathways application, it'll still take 1 or 2 business days before you can track that in your application. So be patient, give us a little time, and keep track in your application to see that score available. So that's the OET scores. For each of your pathways, as mentioned, there's going to be different document requirements, and it varies from pathway to pathway. So pathway 1, you need to request certain documents be sent directly to Ecfmg, or have Ecfmg primary source verify them with the regulatory authority. Pathway 6, you're going to be identifying those physicians who are going to evaluate you in the mini CEX. And of course, pathways 3, 4, 5, you're going to coordinate with your medical school for that attestation of your clinical skills. We really encourage applicants to submit their application and materials early, just to ensure we can process everything in time so that you can enter the match. For each pathway, no matter what pathway you're going through, you're going to be relying on outside either organizations or individuals to complete some steps or provide information to Ecfmg, and their timelines for doing so may vary. So, we just encourage everyone to apply early, follow up with your organizations or schools or evaluators, just to make sure that everything is completed in a timely fashion. Finally, you're going to be able to track the status of each part of your application throughout the process online in your Pathways application. Again, it's not Oasis, it's going to be a separate link to log into. And what I want to kind of highlight a little bit is some of the processing times that you'll experience. We have a very high volume of applicants, as you can imagine, and so we do process them sort of in the order in which they're received and in the order in which we receive additional documents or information. So once you submit your application will undergo an initial review and processing, and that may take up to 5 business days from when you submitted it. Anytime we receive new documents for application, we ask that you allow 5 business days for those to be added to your application and the tracking information to be updated. And then finally, once we receive everything, no matter what pathway you're in, pathway 1 through 6, everything, you've completed all the requirements, including having your OET scores made available, your entire Pathways application will undergo one final review. And again, that's going to take up to 5 business days. And I say up to because typically we're able to process things more quickly than that, but it really just depends on our volume, which varies week to week. So we just appreciate your patience and just keep these processing times in mind as you're tracking the progress of your application. Last, I do want to highlight one frequently asked question. I don't know if I saw it in the Q&A, but this is something we get asked all the time. And that is, how long after your Pathways application is approved until your Ecfmg certificate is issued? So first, Pathways is just one requirement. So you have to make sure that you've completed all of the requirements, including the credential verification, before your certificate can be issued. And once you've completed every requirement, your certification record goes for a final review, and then your certificate will be issued. That final review typically takes between 5 and 10 business days to complete. And you'll be able to track in Oasis the issuance of your certificate. So on behalf of everyone at ECFMG, I do want to thank you all for taking the time out of your day to learn more about this. I've included some information here about how to get in touch with our applicant information services team in case you have any specific questions about your particular certification process. But I do believe we have some time for questions now as well. So I will turn it back over to our hosts.
Thank you so much, Danielle, for the information.
Yes, thank you.
So we have many questions for both Danielle and Jack. We can begin with questions from the OET section. So what is the best time to give this test when you are on the medical journey? And I think Danielle can answer this.
Yeah, so we do recommend that you take this test right around the time you're going to be applying for pathways. And again, that's because as you saw, they're not valid indefinitely. Right now for 2024, we're only accepting scores received after Jan 2022. So no need to take it early, really schedule it for when you're ready for pathways and to enter the match.
So if they previously took an exam before January 2022, they would have to retake it.
That's correct, yes.
Okay, thank you. And is it possible to go back and look at text after the 5-minute period in the writing section for OET?
In the 5-minute period after the writing section, yes, you still have time to reference that. There's just 5 dedicated minutes to look at that portion before the writing portion starts, but you can refer back to it during the writing section. Mm-hmm.
Perfect. And is there a certain order so people are prepared? Is it writing, listening, reading, or which comes first, or is it randomized per examinee?
I will have to double check on that. I mean, it's my understanding that it's listening, reading, writing, speaking, kind of the order that I presented today, but I can get back to you on that as well. Like anything that I'm, that I am unsure of, I can make sure to do some research and send you a follow-up email with the information. But it's my understanding that it's in the order of that I presented it today.
Thank you. So do you have a suggestion on months of preparation that you think is appropriate before appearing to the test if English is not a foreign language to the student?
If English is not a foreign language to the student, obviously it's a very different type of experience. What I would recommend is taking the pulse test online, right? It's 30 Australian dollars, which is even less if you're paying in US dollars. So I would recommend using that as a resource, and that would really give you an idea of where you are currently. I think, maybe taking a free intro course, kind of familiarizing yourself with the test and then taking pulse will give you a really good idea of where you're at. Because, I don't want to give, it really does depend on the candidate, but I would say that that's probably your best bet and would give you the most realistic timeline of how prepared you are to take the test.
Thank you. And is the exam available to take at home, or do you need to go into a center?
So currently only the paper-based version and the computer-based version are accepted, and both of those you would have to take at the center.
At a center. Okay.
I'm sorry, I just want to clarify that OET at home is accepted by ECFMG.
Oh, in certain circumstances. Okay, I'm sorry about that. Yes, I guess
it's only typically available to applicants in countries where a testing center is not available.
Understood. Okay.
And another question is, well, sometimes it's difficult with depending on your accent. So they're asking if someone in the listening performs the test, is it someone from the US or is it like a UK accent or?
That really varies. So, OET is designed for, for medical graduates who want to practice in any English-speaking country. So that being said, you can find a variety of accents. So it could be an Australian accent, a UK accent, an American accent. So it really does vary. And, the materials on our website also help to expose people to those different types of accents. And another thing that we always say to candidates is obviously watching TV shows or listening to podcasts or anything like that from native English speakers from different regions can also help to kind of familiarize yourself with those different accents. But on the test itself, it could be a variety of different accents. It varies.
Does it matter if you come up with a correct diagnosis or not during the OET, or is it purely a language interaction assessment?
That's a very good question. So for the it is an English language assessment. That being said, the one place where there's a little bit of a caveat to that would be on the speaking section, where there's that focus on clinical communication. But again, for clinical communication, it's not. The clinical communication piece is not assessing whether you make the right diagnosis. It's kind of those other things that I was mentioning. How are you engaging with the interlocutor? Are you dominating the conversation? Are you having a real real exchange? So, the short answer would be no. You would not be penalized for not making the right diagnosis, but you do have to keep in mind those clinical communication skills.
Thank you so much. And just to clear up, someone was asking that, yes, if you took the OET before January 2022, it's not valid, even if the score is valid for Ecfmg certification or applying to pathways. Danielle has said that it has to have been taken after January 22. So anyone who has done the test must redo it in order to apply for a certification.
I just want to clarify, I saw a few people ask this related question that only applies to the OET exam. That does not apply to your USMLE Step 1 and Step 2 CK examinations.
Yes, thank you. And we have some questions for Ecfmg as well.
Yes, we do.
Sure.
A lot, actually.
Well, I'm happy to answer.
So the first question is about Pathway 1. It says, should the institution send you the exercise license letter by email, or is the participant required to bring it to you and send it to you by his own email?
So we actually have two options. The licensing authority can actually email it directly to us, or not all authorities are willing to do that. And if they're not, what the applicant can do is provide that document to us, and we will reach out to the authority to primary source verify the authenticity of that document. And we work with authorities all around the world. We've established contacts with all of those authorities.
Thank you. Another question for Ecfmg is pertaining to Pathway 6. So there is a component of Pathway 6 that's called the mini clinical. So the mini clinical, does the person have to complete the 6 patient encounters within 15 days of applying to the pathway?
So no, so the 15-day limit that you're referring to is really tied to the request you send to your physician evaluator. So you're going to identify your physician evaluator and send them a request to enter our portal to fill in the evaluation form. Once you send that request, the physician evaluator has 15 days to accept it. Once they accept it, they have 15 days to complete the encounter with you and provide the evaluation in our portal. And the reason we do this time limit is because you can't, once a physician evaluator accepts your invitation, the system wants to see that completion. You won't be able to reject or remove that encounter. It'll either expire after the 15 days or we'll get that evaluation from the evaluator. But if you apply now, you can wait to invite your evaluator at any point in the application process.
And referring to this question about pathway 6. So it does have this component of, it's an extra component besides USMLE steps and the OET exam, which is called the mini clinical. Do you have to take this mini clinical with US doctors, or are they able to use physicians in their country and apply through there?
Sure, they do not need to be US physicians. We do have a list of criteria that they must meet. And there's information for your evaluators online as well. So the criteria include that they are licensed, fully licensed in the jurisdiction where the clinical encounter is taking place, and that they've been licensed for at least 5 years. But that license may be any license around the world. It does not need to be a US license.
So the next question is, does the pathway application and/or ECFMG certificate expires after the match cycle of the year?
Yes, so if you do not meet the requirements of your pathway application by the end of the application cycle, it will be rejected, and you'll be required to apply again in the future if you choose to continue your certification process. And that's just if you haven't met all of the requirements. Once your pathway application is approved, you're then able to continue. And if you are certified based on a pathway, your certificate will expire December 31st, 2024.
Another question is OET necessary for each pathway?
Yes, OET is a requirement regardless of your pathway and also regardless of your native language or language of instruction at your medical school.
And do you need the ECFMG certification in order to take the USMLE Step 3?
Yes, you must be ECFMG certified to be eligible for Step 3.
So for those who are applying for, let's say, the Match 2025, which will be applying on September 2024, when do they need to take the OET for ECFMG to provide the ECFMG certification?
We haven't released any details about the requirements for next match season, but if you're applying next year, we would recommend that you apply, that you don't apply in the current match season, that you apply for OET and the future pathways in 2024.
So we do have a question that probably 50 times, and it is the same question that all of us have. Those of us who come from countries who need to be verified by the new policy, they're wondering what's going to happen to all of us coming from those medical schools.
So you're referring to the recognized accreditation policy.
Yes.
We are beginning our initial implementation of that policy in 2024. And the initial implementation involves reporting whether or not your school is recognized, is accredited by a recognized body on the ECFMG status report that will be shared in your ERAS application. And the initial implementation does not impede any individual from being eligible for certification or examination. So you can continue your certification process or journey that you're already on. It does not prohibit you from that.
So after that time, it's like expired. It's not. It doesn't matter. We can keep pursuing ECFMG, USMLE, and all of that, because they're wondering, what if I get like my USMLE ID? What if I do the notary cam? All of that. They need to know, like, what if I apply for Step 1 to be safe for this whole process? They're all asking the same question.
Well, we haven't released any information yet about additional requirements or implementation. And so once those requirements are known, there'll be information for those who are already in their journey for certification. But there's nothing changed for 2024 in terms of your eligibility for certification or your eligibility for examination, even if you do not start the process this year. So if you don't start the process till 2024, you'll still be eligible for certification and examination. The initial implementation is just reporting out on your medical school's accreditation status on your ERAS, the status report that goes to your ERAS application.
Another question is, do the STEP scores expire and the ECFMG certificate, does it expires ever?
Yes. So ECFMG certificates that are issued based on a pathway will expire. Currently, if they're issued based on the 2024 or earlier pathways, will expire on December 31st, 2024. We will provide information ahead of that date for applicants on what the next step is to continue with their certification. If ECFMG certificate has an expiration date, it becomes eligible to be valid indefinitely once you complete your first year of accredited training in the US. And there'll be more information about how you can make your certificate valid indefinitely coming soon. We don't have that process yet, but we will be announcing it, and you will have that information again ahead of the expiration date. In terms of the USMLE exams, we do have what we call the 7-year rule, and that means you have to meet the examination and clinical skills requirements for certification within a 7-year period. So that's your step 1, step 2 CK, and your pathways approved application must all be done within a 7-year period. So and that period begins when you pass your first piece of the certification. So if you pass step 1, you then need to complete step 2 CK and your pathways within 7 years of that date. If you do not, that earliest examination or requirement will be void, and you'll have to retake or redo that requirement.
Thank you. Another question. So a couple people have been pursuing ECFMG certification for a couple years, and previously ECFMG certification was given by also taking the step 2 clinical skills exam.
Mm-hmm.
So if you failed it, now you would have to apply by pathway 2, but they're asking if they passed it, pathway 6, sorry. If they passed it, would they still have to apply by pathway 6, or are they eligible for pathway 1 if they have an unrestricted license?
So if you have passed step 2 CS and it's still within your 7-year period, you are not required to do a pathway at all. You've met the clinical and communication skills requirements via your step 2 CS requirement.
So they're eligible for certification.
Yes, it's not pathways replaces a step 2 CS. So if you've already passed step 2 CS, our system won't even allow you to submit a pathways application, as long as your score is still within your 7-year period.
Thank you.
So on the same note with step 2 CS, they're asking, I know they're eligible for a pathway, but what about for OET exam? If
OET is part of the pathways. So if they've passed step 2 CS and it's still valid, they don't need to take OET.
Within the 7 years.
They don't need to take OET at all. As long as your step 2 CS score is still valid within your 7-year period, you don't need to do pathways or OET, because those are the 2 components that were previously fulfilled through step 2 CS.
So yes, step 2 CS will replace all the pathways. The pathways came in to replace step 2 CS, really. So anyone who has passed step 2 CS can apply directly for ECFMG certification.
Great
Yes, they
news.
just need to meet the other requirements, the credentials and step 1 and step 2 CK.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. We appreciate the help of these wonderful organizations for dedicating their time, and we hope that we can collaborate further in the future. To all those who are applying to this match cycle for 2024, we wish you the best of luck. And to all of those who are joining us at the IMG event in New York City, we will see you on August 19th.
See you in New York. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Thank you, Jack. Thank you, Danielle. And it was a pleasure being here with all of you. I can't wait to see you all in August, and we're excited for more collaborations with Ecfmg and OET. And also, we actually spoke with OET, and we are planning one in Spanish, and on like Project IMG, OET explaining how to study for the exam in Spanish. So for those that speak Spanish, stay tuned. Okay, guys, we love you.
Bye. Thank you.
Yeah.